Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Welcome, friends, listeners, and viewers from across America and around the world. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. We broadcast live Wednesday evenings, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, and I thank all of you for taking the time to join us this evening. I have what I feel to be a pretty interesting show lined up. I'm not going to be covering it in great detail with regard to reading a bunch of information. I will share kind of a background introduction to this particular story, and I certainly cannot proclaim to be very well researched. This is something that I've been newly exposed to, something that my curiosity has certainly been piqued with regard to the possibilities of what I will be speaking on this evening, and that has to do with the Tartarian Empire. And for those that are unfamiliar with even the context of those particular words, I'm sure you're scratching your head as to what do you mean by the Tartarian Empire? We've never heard about it and are completely unfamiliar with whatever it is you might be speaking about with regard to topic. And certainly that was my same reaction when first introduced to this particular issue. And it's interesting because I don't even know how I began my research on it. Maybe it was a recommended YouTube video or listening to, I don't know how it was that I became exposed to the topic, but since that time, I've had listeners contacting me and also comments placed upon my videos, especially those that were about mud fossils or the antediluvian times, the destruction of the first world age, that people have asked me to look into the issue of the Tartarian Empire as well as the events of what could have been and what is now being discussed as mud floods, which is intriguing when you really begin to examine, especially the photographs of cities spread across the world, that I guess photography was really just coming into its own at that particular time in the, I don't know, 1800s, 1850s, 1860s, thereabouts, that photography was still kind of a new phenomena, and that there are these old photographs of all of these different cities all across the world that seem to show in evidence that many what seems to look like very modern and advanced architecture, that all of these cities were somehow submerged. And if not within the same event, at least within the seemingly same period of time. And that you have this really beautiful, grand, and intricate architecture spread all across the plane of the earth in all the regions of the world, all created in similar architectural style and seemingly connected to this Tartarian empire as it had been spread out and had once ruled over large tracts and regions of the world. And that somehow, in whatever manner that it occurred, that the power structure of these particular people, who were a conglomeration of multi ethnic nationalities, religions, and um, just a motley crew of individuals from all different parts of the world, and that they had all been united somewhat in confederation and living peacefully with one another under the banner of this Tartarian empire. And certainly, I've never heard about, never been taught, not, and I have a particular interest in history, and I've never once read or studied or heard about this particular culture, nor of its influence, nor of its outreach across the different parts of the world. And there's another intriguing aspect to the architectural style and to the buildings, especially the government buildings that were built up in all the different countries of the world. Not only were they of similar presentation, but a lot of these particular buildings also seem to have been built on a very much larger scale. And for what seems to be a people of a very much larger stature. And so looking at the pictures of the different cities, and you can, I mean, it almost does not matter that when you look up the different cities, whether it's in America or Europe or Asia or Japan, which was, largely locked away and separated from Western influence, that you will find the same kind of what they have deemed Greco Roman architecture, that this particular style seems to be connected to a people which history has expunged from memory, in that there was this almost like the what seems to be in the mythologies as the survivors of the Atlantean culture and mother civilization, that for whatever reason, even in the ancient times, that these people in diaspora spread out and went to many different regions of the world, and that they did so in order to preserve, to share, and to influence these other, what were seemingly more primitive cultures worldwide, and that they had a capacity for technology and an ability to understand it, whether construction or geometry or symbolism, whatever, that they had a superior capacity to utilize skills and skill sets which the knowledge of has been lost to the world. And so I do invite people to begin the study on this particular issue, and I can assure you that it will be an intriguing rabbit hole to begin to go down. And that what you're going to find in connection to this information set is that, like with cosmology, so much of what we have been asserted and so much of what has been established as facts, and of which the world has bought into as being reality and information that would be truthful, that one will learn again that the indoctrination of our educational institutions and what we thought we knew to be fact and reality, that much of it has been contrived and made up for whatever reason. And I mean, it's only in speculation now that we can really even wrap our minds around why the deception, what is the point, and what are they covering up, and why is it so important to the elites of the world to expunge knowledge of these people and their cultural influence upon the different peoples and the different aspects of world history. It doesn't make sense. And it's the same kind of thing when people are confronted with the whole possibility that the helio Copernican um, Darwinian model for explaining the evolution of humanity and our being here, and even not only who we are, but the kind of world we live in and upon. Why the lies? Why try to affirm the earth as a ball when there's obviously and easily determinable that there is no existing curvature. I mean, you can't even conceal the fact, and it doesn't take anything but going out and studying, looking at, and examining, doing a laser test for yourself, or seeing and confirming without a doubt that one can see a monument or cityscape or whatever, even the sunset on water, that there will be an unbroken line from where the sun is setting over the ocean to the viewer on the beachhead, that there will be a pillar of light, an unbroken pillar of night, which will extend from wherever the sun is setting, disappearing from view and reaching the vanishing point, to where the viewer is located on the beach, that there will be a dancing trail of, you know, like a thousand diamonds dancing on the waves of the ocean between you and the sun wherever it's going down. And that unbroken stream of light confirms to us that the water that the sun is setting above, in which we are able to see it all the way to where the point of vanishing is located, that there is no curvature between you and that point on the horizon. And even the properties of water completely negate the possibility of it pooling or gathering together and settling in a curved form. Water cannot adhere to a ball. It must be always contained within a basin. And so these simple things, very simple thing, force everybody that listens with open mind and that capable of overcoming indoctrination and bias. It's certainly easy to determine, again, that there is no rotundity to the shape of the earth. And then the other thing is, there is no way that the earth is moving at 1,037 miles an hour. No way. And there's no way that the earth is spinning, the planetary system is moving at 66,600 miles an hour. And then you add on the speed of not only the earth in motion but the solar system in motion, and then the Milky Way galaxy in motion around that some universal center. They Science says we're moving at 1.2 million miles an hour. And yet you can go outside, and the flag that's outside of my house that sits atop a 30-foot pole in my front yard will be completely listless and unmoving. And so, no matter what one thinks about, again, the shape of the earth or this topic, um, certainly it is not what we have been told. And so this whole thing with Tartaria is another aspect of what seems to be the matrix of illusion. And so I want to read something really quickly just to give people a little bit more of a grasp on this particular topic, and then I'll comment a little bit more. Because again, it's one of those intriguing things that, for whatever reason, now has been brought to light, and that the Most High is forcing everybody to reconsider. I mean, this was like flat Earth 5 years ago. Well, not 5 years ago, but in 2015. And what is really intriguing about this is for the people that like to look at old maps, which is what really kind of led me to it. I like to study and look at the older maps, especially the Mercator and the Gleason map, because of my interest in the Earth being a plane, and that the elites also know and share this knowledge amongst themselves. I mean, the fact that the azimuthal equidistant projection map is found as the emblem of the United Nations flag is a sign that they know more than what they are letting on. And at the same time that they are promoting people to laugh at flat earthers and to label us as, you know, conspiracy theorists or lunatic fringe, they themselves are promoting and hiding in plain sight on the flag, the seat of world government, the banner of the United Nations, and so many other international world organizations like um, the maritime, the International Maritime Organization, or civilian aviation. Um, these different organizations also have included within them the same posture, the same orientation of the continents of the world spread out in circle around the North Pole as center of the earthen plane. And so this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is a conspiracy reality. And there's an individual that I've been listening to with great interest of late. His name is Max Egan. I find him to be a very well researched individual. There, of course, are some things that I have difference of opinion um, with him. The the first and foremost being that he believes humanity will be able to save us from the New World Order, and that's simply not going to happen. I mean, there's a reason why Christ came into the flesh as the incarnated Son of God, and dying on the cross delivered to us salvation and eternity through him, and that he will come again at the end of days in order to settle the harvest and to end the enmity between the bloodlines. Because here's the other aspect of that I have disagreement with him on, and that has to do with we are not all the same, that there are here with us as the children of Adam, the children of Cain, the seed of the serpent, and that they are the sons of perdition, the children of Belial, the progeny of the devil, which propagate and perpetuate evil, and that work through secrecy and blood oath behind the scenes to cause and stir up chaos, and through controlled opposition to pin minorities against one another in order to advance the slaughter of innocents. And that they do these kind of things, starting wars of aggression and wars which have no basis in truth. They do those kind of things in order to provide the blood sacrifice with which they worship their father, the devil. And that these individuals, this bloodline, and these people are nowhere near normal and like the rest of us. They are homicidal, schizophrenic, and totally out of their minds when it comes to their natural inclination to commit sin and indulge in evil. So much so that they do not even spare their own children from the terror of the kind of abomination that they are involved in. That they even expose their own children to the sadomistic, pedophilic weirdness of satanic ritual abuse. And that's how messed up and backwards these people are. And so don't tell me that we're all the same, because we are not. And for those that choose to believe so, well, you're missing the whole point of why it is that even now evil rules in this world, and how it is that such rule will continue, and that it would be ongoing until every member of the human race was wiped out. That Christ said, unless the days be shortened, there should be no flesh left. And so, while I believe you're a most excellent researcher, Max Egan, this is the one thing that you are missing. And that once you open yourself to the possibilities of what I teach as far as the bloodlines, then everything will click in to play for you. And it will become clear more so than it already is. Because there is a war ongoing even now, and it's not just an information war, but it's a war for the lives of our children, the minds of our children. And we have living here amongst us as the normal, humane, we wish to extend our liberties and freedoms to all people everywhere, and to pray and to hope and to wish that everybody had chance and opportunity to grow up in an environment where they can be nurtured in love and peace. That's totally not what the elites want for everybody. They, ruling with impunity, want to be able to slaughter the masses at will and for no reason at all, simply because they wake up and feel like, they want to have a blood sacrifice. And certainly that's what their religion is all about. And that's another aspect of what we don't understand in the world, is that there is this group of psychopaths running everything that have such power that they print the money that is loaned to the governments of the world, and which these governments pay interest upon. How are you going to overthrow such power structure when most of the world does not even understand the Ponzi scheme of the Federal Reserve System or of central banks? And they are not intelligent enough to grasp and to make sense of the charade that is being pulled upon them daily, and which they participate willingly in the mechanics of that penitentiary system we call life. How are you going to free them from the bondage of such institutionalized slavery when they don't even see it as slavery at all? They think they are as free as can be, and that life is, just a beautiful blessing. To have the chance to go to work and pay their taxes and to use the money that the Illuminists give to us and mark and symbol. I mean, there's a reason why God had to send his son here in order to bring liberty to the captives. And a lot of the people that have brought forth just really beautiful information with regard to all of this Tartarian deception and the information about the mud flood. Well, I've noticed that a lot of them are completely new age, and they, buy into the Anunnaki are our creators, that the Sumerians established bases on the moon and Mars, that the planet Nibiru is their home base, and that they're coming to save us from ourselves, that they're going to reinstitute this golden age. And I'm sorry to say that that's just not going to happen. These beings are the fallen angels that were cast out of the heavens that rebelled against the Most High so long ago. And it's these powers, principalities, these rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places, they are the demiurge, the power structure, the archons, which are ruling from behind the scene. Satan, the adversary of man, is the eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid. This spiritual war of which the Bible speaks about is the reality that we are dealing with. And yet, so many people are going to miss that as well. All right, but back to Tartary. So let me just read this really quickly because I want to share uh, a note from the CIA too that speaks about this, that gives credence to how there's an organized effort by in my opinion, the children of Cain, because they are the hidden hand that always expunges whatever truth it is that they're trying to hide, even like with their own existence and their connections to the fallen angels, and that the fallen angels are demonic entities and not extraterrestrial beings from somewhere out there. They've been banished here with us since even before we arrived on the scene. But, people that are interested in this and that want to know more, please do explore my work because I make all of this freely available. And I help you to grasp the underlying connections behind all these things so that you can make sense of the bigger picture. And this is just another part of the aspect of making sense of the underlying truth of all things. But, anyways, it says Tartary, a vast country in the northern parts of Asia, bounded by Siberia on the north and west. This is called the Great Tartary. The Tartars, who lie south of Muscovy and Siberia, are those of Astrakhan, Circassian, and Dagestan, situated northwest of the Caspian Sea. The Kalmyk Tartars, who lie between Siberia and the Caspian Sea, the Uzbek Tartars, and Moguls, who lie north of Persia and India, and lastly, those of Tibet, who lie northwest of China. This is the Encyclopedia Britannica 1771. And so when you look at some of the old maps from like between the 1600s and the 1800s, you'll see this massive empire of Grand Tartary that also shows within its expanse and part of its colonial outreach that it was also in control of and had established connection and rule over the southern parts of what are now the United States of America. Not only just these southern parts, but the all the way from New York, Massachusetts area down the East Coast, all across the southern border region from Georgia to Arizona and California, upwards along the western portions of what is now, the western seaboard, that they had popularized and also established cities in the same kind of architectural style that we see spread all through this Grand Tartary region of Europe, Asia, and the Far East. That we see, you'll find this particular architecture even in places such as South America, Japan, and other far off places. And that supposedly the only reason that they did not move into the interior of the United States, but remained along the coastal regions, is because the red-haired cannibal giants were living in the interiors and all up and down along what is the mighty Mississippi River and the trade routes of that river as it extends into and all along the tributaries that are connected to it in the interior of the United States of America. But clearly, in these maps, and many of them, you'll see again the extent, which, at that time, this is the largest empire that the world has ever known, far exceeding even what Alexander the Great had established during his life and time. I mean, we've never had an empire, and this was supposedly also established by Genghis Khan, and that this particular culture and civilization had spread all across the world, but has been expunged from knowledge of those particular cultures and civilizations, which, give allegiance to the Greco Roman upbringing. And so here is the CIA document that speaks about this, which this should be intriguing enough to pique the minds of, those of you that are seekers of truth that may not have been interested at all in examining what I'm talking about this evening. But this should at least pique your curiosity. This CIA document was declassified in 1998, but created in 1957. It says, or let us take the matter of history, which along with religion, language, and literature constitute the core of a people's cultural heritage. Here again, the communists have interfered in a shameless manner. For example, on the 9th of August of 1944, the Central Committee of the Communist Party, sitting in Moscow, issued a directive ordering the party's Tartar Provincial Committee, quote, to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria, to liquidate serious shortcomings of the history of Tartaria and mistakes of a nationalistic character omitted by individual writers and historians in dealing with Tartar history, end quote. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten, let us be frank, was to be falsified in order to eliminate references to great Russian aggressions and to hide the facts of the real course of Tartar Russian relations. And this was no isolated case. In every Muslim area within the USSR, historians, on orders of the Communist Party, have rewritten history to distort the facts so that the Russians appear always in a good light. Needless to say, histories which present the facts truthfully have been withdrawn and destroyed so that the present and future generations of Muslims are forever denied the chance of learning the true facts of their nation's past. And I would add that even though here we see a precedence on expunging the history of these various Muslim nations and the cultures and peoples uh, tied to Muslim as a religion, to Islam as a religion, that this is not just the history of Muslim people or to those that are tied to Islam, but this is the history of most people from around the world. And so it's not just their history which is being swept under the rug and disappeared in evidence from the annals of history, but this is our history, mine and yours, the ancient Americas. You know, when you see the extent of Tartaria and come to know a little bit more about their beliefs and the kind of culture and the kind of civilization and the abilities, the capacity, the free energy devices that they had incorporated into their architectural style, the knowledge, the aqueducts, and the capacity that they had to build and to construct just modern cityscapes and to organize cities, states, nations in infrastructure far exceeds even what we have knowledge of and are capable of doing today. That they had a knowledge and an ability that far exceeds the civil engineering and planning of the modern era. And that examining the infrastructure of all these different places that they have said to, the extents of their empire all across all these regions of the world, that looking at the buildings that all of these countries had inherited, it makes one wonder as to what kind of technologies did they possess? What kind of world did they create, especially with the free energy devices? Considering how so many in this day and age struggle to survive just by having to pay energy bills to survive comfortably in the heat of summer, in the cold of winter, how much money, effort, and time every individual has to put forth in order to generate the income just to live and survive within the matrix of this penitentiary system. That if one had all of that freed up, just how much easier it would be to not only survive, but also to thrive, to not have that burden placed upon individuals and families. How freeing that would be to have all that time available for other pursuit. What people could do with raising their own food and taking care of their families, or raising cattle, or surviving off of the land, how much easier it would be for them, and less stressful, and also beneficial with regard to health, in growing your own food, taking care of your own needs, working with the land, and having a physical interaction with the earth in that manner, teaching your children to be able to replicate and to take care of themselves and to survive and live off the land. It's a knowledge that is priceless but lost. All right, we'll be right back.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I give thanks for individuals like Good Prevails here on our Discord chat, who's very familiar with this information and is pasting a lot to the chat room so that others can also find and also be led in their going down this rabbit hole, because there again is a lot of disinformation connected to this particular topic, and a very heavy new age influence, as I spoke about in the first hour. But let me continue with this article, and I did post a couple of videos. If you go to YouTube, just type in Tartarian Empire and Mud Flood, and what you'll come to learn is that there seems to have been a series of cataclysms going back to the 1600s to the early 1800s, which speak about even a time when a year where there was no summer. There's even connections of supposedly some kind of celestial body being seen in the heavens, some kind of commentary, something that may have affected even that there was an earthquake specific to the New Madrid fault line here, and that there are also eyewitness testimony as to steam vents and sulfuric pockets coming up near the Mississippi River, and that the land was in upheaval, and that people groups were swallowed in chasms, sinkholes appearing, and that there's records of the native peoples during this time that speak about, such events. And so, and it's not just local here to America, but there seems to be worldwide stories of devastation having taken place. And what is intriguing about this whole idea of there being some kind of weird, anomalous mud flood that, some of these cities and some of these buildings that seem to have been, again, established by the Tartarian Empire across the world previous to these particular events unfolding, that they were buried, you know, to 20, 30 feet in mud. And that what happened um, after the devastation of these events is that people just changed the ground level and began to build right on top of all of this mud that had settled into these particular regions. And that, again, these particular cities and buildings are found all over the world. And that after the ruinous um, cataclysm of this age and these events, that all of these cities kind of just reconstructed from what was already there. And that much of what we thought to have been newly constructed buildings and civilian government centers are, in fact, remnants of this old Tartarian empire, which nobody speaks about and which knowledge of has been completely eradicated from the general public. And again, the question beckons as to why. And it seems to be that the New World Order, the Illuminists, and those that are engaged in establishing an infrastructure whereby people are forced and taxed to survive within the parameters of this matrix, that they are the ones that are responsible for eradicating this free technologies. And that even recently, as to the the 1990s, the late 1990s, 1997 or so, we see that the powers that ought not to be, they were responsible for destroying the infrastructure of the electric car and support for really what was a far superior system of transport and technology. And to not have to utilize petroleum products and their devastating impact on the environment. And, California had established and had on the books a law which forced them to have 10% alternative fuel vehicles. And they already had built into place an infrastructure to support these electric cars, which, because they ran on electricity, they had, no moving parts with regard to what we see as, the petroleum um, gasoline engine. So they were completely quiet and people loved them. And yet the battery technology was increasing, that they could go 250, 300 miles easy without needing a recharge, which is more than enough for most people during the day, especially in use over the course of a day. And yet, you know, the car industry and the petroleum industry, they bought up all the patents and they scrapped all these brand new electric cars. And that industry was completely eradicated, completely wiped away, as it was during, the early establishment of the car as a mode of individual transportation, that there was built into the infrastructure of cities across the United States of America these these rail lines that provided mass transportation and were more than economical and useful to the peoples of the different cities, that they provided an easy way for them to gain transportation access to their work, and was easily affordable, that whole all of those streetcar lines were bought up and decimated, and the technology and the infrastructure eradicated from being in place. And so, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to the elites eradicating free energy and free technology. Even the murder of Tesla, I believe, was part of the component of, that he was working on a free energy system that I believe the Tartarians had already utilized and incorporated into their design, the design of their buildings. And you can see what seems to be, especially on the various churches and cathedrals and buildings, the government buildings all over the Tartarian Empire, what we in most modern people believe to be nothing more than ornamentation, that there seems to be an implied free energy component to their particular design. And there's something more to the organization of even, the different parks and the fountains that they established, the drinking fountains, which were at the center of the city organization, the parks, that the these globes and what seems to be lighting in all these different park systems incorporated into the Tartarian Empire across the planet, the Earth, the plane of the Earth. I still slip up and use global or planetary terms every once in a while, but and so there's more to the story than what we are being told and what we are privy to. I mean, the fact that people can look up, I don't even remember the inventor's name, but the guy that had a car that ran on water, and that he had created this technology to establish vehicles that ran on water, that he was poisoned and his technology also disappeared. Even diesel, Rudolph Diesel, who created the diesel engine to run off peanut oil or any kind of oil that farmers you know, anywhere in the Americas, that they could create or fabricate corn oil, vegetable oil, whatever kind of oil, that Diesel had created an engine to be utilized in such manner by the farmer, and yet he was found face down in a pond as well. And his engine didn't come out and wasn't released to the public until there was a petroleum based product, diesel fuel, for people to utilize within it. And the crazy thing is that these diesel engines can be utilized even now on, the grease and the byproducts of these fast food industries, these restaurants, and that they could be run off of these oils and waste products, which these restaurants usually pay people to come and take away. And so, I mean, that's just further confirmation as to the original intent of the design and to the freedom and the liberty that Rudolf Diesel was providing, giving to the world during that time, to not have to use petroleum based products. And yet, the industry found a way to eradicate his design and to skew it so that, people are forced to purchase and to pay for product in order to utilize such design and technology. It's completely, I mean, and that's why it's going to take the Most High coming to end the whole scheme of the New World Order and the power and the control and the money and the wealth and the influence that they have over humanity, fate, and destiny. Because up to them, they would murder anybody that had a good thought, a good idea, in order to keep substandard the technologies available to us. And they don't care at whose expense. The environment, our children, uh, adults, individuals, the animals of the world, they don't care at whose expense it is. As long as the profits continue to roll in. And so, giving that they will put profit over the health and well being of the people, the creatures, and the environment itself, one can understand why it is that the Most High God has established hell as a place of punishment for such individuals. That anybody that would put profit above people, above the suffering of individuals and nations, and even the sufferings of a world, that these kind of individuals do not deserve to have their joy continued at the expense of everybody else. And so, I say, Lord, come quickly, tomorrow, even, today, even, right now, even. Because those individuals, the New World Order, Satan, and the rebel angels, and all those, their progeny, and the children that joined them in blood oath, that involve themselves in victim and child sacrifice and the slaughter of innocents and the rape, pillage, and ongoing plunder of people and nations, There's going to be a rude awakening one day for all of you. And the justice that you skirted for so long, the recompense, the consequence of your action will be brought upon you. And then you will receive your just reward. And it is not going to be a pretty sight. And I look forward to that day. I look forward to that day because I know that even though the elect, as far as those that truly know what's going on and that have stood themselves up in truth to fight against and to arm people with knowledge and to sound the trumpet and to warn others so that their blood is not upon their heads. Even though those individuals are but a small remnant of the larger sheepfold, I know that the majority of the people in the world are good hearted, God fearing, and well intentioned, and that the Most High truly does love you in your meekness and in your efforts to survive in the insanity of what has been imposed upon you. And God understands your struggle, understands how difficult this world has been made, and that the elites have established it this way in order to cause misery and to divide you from knowledge of your Maker and of truly remembrance of who you are and what all of this is really all about. That they have kept you in such darkness as to steal the identity of who you are in the remembrance of Christ. That the kingdom truly is within, and that you, as an angelic being caught up in this fallen world, are something of a miracle, and that being a co creative link to the source and force and the Godhead that established the creation, you are something indeed beautiful and miraculous, and that given an understanding your empowerment within even the confines of this world and this space, that you truly, if you focus and you utilize your moments in productivity and to create a miracle outcome, that you could do wonders, that you could really influence the world in a way that few people ever have, and that potential lies with each and every one of you. It's just that you've been taught and instructed to doubt and to belittle your worth and to conform to being a follower and a worker and a cog in the system rather than being a leader or one who does and creates something just unfathomable that you can use your everyday, the new opportunity of every day to really affect this world. Even though, you know, we're not going to save it. It's going to take Christ to do that. But still, I'm not saying give up or surrender. You know, battle and fight till the very end and do what you can. I'm not saying at all to, you know, bend over and take it or to lie down and let it all just fall on top of you. Do what you can. Use your every moment to fight against this evil and to out what you know about the designs of the New World Order and the insanity that they have established as matrix for basically leading away and keeping people astray and ignorant of their connection to the kingdom. Okay, I need to get back on topic. And so, looking at, let me read just a little bit more. As far as this, the Tartarian Empire, continuing with this article, it says the other reason why I think Tartary had to be multi-religious and multicultural is its vastness during various moments in time. For example, in 1652, Tartary appears to have control over North America. And, you know, again, there's a huge map that shows, in fact, not only do they have control over, you know, North America or the southern portions, the eastern seaboard and the western seaboard, but also South America and Central America and down into the interiors of the Americas, this vast extent and reach of the Tartarian Empire, you know, at a time and at a space where people believe that, you know, there were no advanced cultures and civilizations extending out towards this particular part of the world. Here's about the cover up. It says the official history is hiding a major world power which existed as late as the 19th century. Tartary was a country with its own flag, its own government, and its own place on the map. Its territory was huge, but somehow quietly incorporated into Russia and some other countries. This country you can find on the maps predating the second half of the 19th century. Ngram by Google Books shows how Tartary was quietly put away. Yet sometime in the 18th century, Tartary Muscovite was the biggest country in the world, 3,050,000 square miles. And I'll put a link to this particular article because there are a lot of maps and a lot of images and a lot of links to this particular story in which you can examine it for yourself and you can look at the extent of this worldwide empire. And again, it's going to force you to consider why has such knowledge and why has such information been eradicated? what is behind the cover up. And again, it's my opinion that these particular people were very advanced in technological means, and that they also are said to have been the survivors of what was the Atlantean empire and the high technologies that they had back then. And so, um, oh, and the other thing which has been also covered up about these particular peoples is that there was a language which unified them as the native and indigenous peoples worldwide. That a Magyar, what is called a Magyar, and this is also connected to the Thracian script, which has only recently been decoded, and that these particular people, um, that there's a connection to these whole Hungarian and Bulgarian languages, these ancient languages, and that it is connected also to the Edenic, Proto-Semitic, and uh, Edenic language of the world connected to the Paleo-Hebrew. And so that is interesting as well. And that these particular people spoke these languages and were able to communicate across these vast regions. And that whereas English now is that particular language and what the world now uses mostly to communicate, previous to the English and previous to this knowledge, this Magyar language had served in that capacity. And you can see in this article all the different flags and all the connections. I'm going to continue reading. It is also worth mentioning that in the British flag table of 1783, there are 3 different flags listed as a flag of the Tsar of Moscow. There is also an imperial flag of Russia, as well as multiple naval flags, and all of them are preceded by a flag of the Viceroy of Russia. The significance of the Viceroy is in the definition of the term. Viceroy is a regal office who runs a country, colony, city, province, or subnational state. In the name of and as the representative of the monarch of the territory, our official history will probably say that it was the Tsar of Russia who would appoint a viceroy of Moscow. I have reason to doubt that, and why is the flag of the viceroy of Moscow positioned prior to any of the other Russian flags? There's a growing opinion in Russia that the French invasion of Russia played out according to a different scenario. The one where Tsar Alexander I and Napoleon were on the same side. Together they fought against Tartary, essentially France and St. Petersburg against Moscow, Tartary, and there's a strong circumstantial evidence to support such a theory. The capital of Russia was St. Petersburg, yet Napoleon chose to attack Moscow. Why? It appears that in 1912 there was a totally different recollection of the events of 1812. How else could you explain the commemorative 1912 manners honoring Napoleon, and specifically the one with Alexander I and Napoleon on the same medal? The below medal says that something similar to strength is in the unity, the will of God, firmness of royalty, love for homeland and people. And so, you know, there are suggestions that even the wars of 1812 and others, that were in fact against the Tartarian Empire, and that even the Great Wall of China was built by the Tartarian Empire during what was their waning strength, and that they had established that wall to keep China from invading their territory. And so there's definitely some anomalies with the history as it played out, also the destruction, the cataclysm of the events leading up to the wars of 1812. That, again, there's the mud flood stuff, and um, just a lot of things that we don't know that we have to reconsider when examining the possibility of this particular culture and civilization has having existed during that time. Similarly, between Russian and French uniforms, there are more different uniforms involved, but the idea remains that they were ridiculously similar. There was one additional combat asset officially available to Russians in the War of 1812, and that was the militia. It does appear that this so called militia was in reality the army of the Tartari fighting against Napoleon and Alexander the First. Russian nobility in St. Petersburg spoke French in the 18th and 19th centuries. The general explanation was that it was the trend of the time and fashion. The 19th century, um, well, there's a whole list of books and publications that speak about this war as being against the Tartarian Empire, and that it could have been what led to its collapse. The ending in the summary is that I think there's enough circumstantial evidence to justify a deeper look into who fought who and why this Tartaria country is so little known about. And the main question out of this all should be, what is the purpose of misleading generations of people? It appears there's something tremendously seriously hidden in our recent history with regard to the Tartarian people and their technologies. All right, I am going to stop there. There's a whole bunch of comments on this article. And as I said, there are a lot of people now beginning to examine and to look into. And what is interesting also is that um, there are connections supposedly to these people as being, even though they are said to be Muslims, and even the Genghis Khan as having to establish, but that there are connections to them being true followers of Christ and his teachings, which is interesting. And so, that's another aspect of the history which is intriguing and one to examine and to look at. And also, because, the whole thing with the Roman Catholic Church is that we know that it is a counterfeit, and that they have throughout the ages gone after the true followers and the true servants of Christ and the Most High God, and that they have established an idolatrous counterfeit form of Christianity, which seems to involve its members in ritual more than even reading the text for themselves, that they are involved in Catholic ritual and performing and of mocking and of repeating over and over these particular ceremonies and rituals, and they have the people and those of the faith involved in such activity rather than in the study of the gospel and of conversation and fellowship with one another to gain greater insight into the truth of the word as contained within the prophecies and the scriptures of the patriarchs and the prophets and the apostles of old. And they don't even encourage such reading. And so, in my opinion, and I'm not, condemning or criticizing all Catholics, just simply the institution. And I would say that even mainstream churchianity, that the majority of mainstream Christian religions are also involved in the same kinds of activities, and that truth is little available in the organized religions and in the buildings and the places that have been established to teach and support the prosperity doctrine, even with the whole thing. It just yesterday was Christmas, and you have all the Christmas plays and all the different pagan ceremonies, the gift giving and the putting up of the Christmas trees and uh, decorating them in gold and tinsel, even though it says very clearly in Jeremiah chapter 10 to not do as the pagan cultures do in establishing, cutting down, and mounting in bracket these Christmas trees and then decorating them in gold and silver tinsel. And it doesn't take, anybody can study and in one night come to the conviction that Christmas is pagan as well as Easter and so many of the other Christian holidays, which are worshiped and supported and practiced by mainstream churchianity. And so, again, it's not difficult to come to the truth on these particular practices, just as it's not difficult at all to determine that there is no curvature to the earth and that water cannot adhere to a ball. But again, so few are willing or even open to overcoming their indoctrination to examine such topic. They don't want to know the truth. They want to be able to continue to abide in their beliefs and claim ignorance as their reason for supporting such ritual abomination. And yeah, I realize that, the the Christians aren't sacrificing children or, involving themselves, I would hope not anyways, into these mass sexual orgies because a lot of these Saturnalia festivals connected to the celebration of the winter solstice, that's what they did. And yeah, that's not what Christians are involving themselves in. But if the origin of the celebration that you are participating in this day and age, if the origins are such that that is the abomination from which it came out of, why would you want to have involvement or connection to such? I wouldn't. And so I'm grateful that my children don't have such expectations and they don't participate as I don't in such involvement. And they're completely okay with that. And for that, I'm grateful. And I can only pray that, I know it's difficult for those of you to remove yourself, especially for mothers that have children or parents that have young kids that, all their friends are getting these gifts and getting these toys and involved in the whole consumerism of Christmas and Halloween and the Easter and Easter egg hunting and all that a lot of times parents will involve themselves in such practice if only for the benefit of their children. And for their kids, they will have a hard time removing themselves from such participation because it is the cultural thing to do. But, it is what it is. Thomas Sayer says that he's reading a book titled 1421, The Year China Discovered America. Interesting. Even explains the origin of the Piri Reis map. There's a lot of information out there. And so, anyways, I just want to thank all of you, those of you that are in the chat room that participate and listen and fellowship with us. You can find our Discord channel on my Facebook page. And if you'd like to join us in group discussion, please do so. Tomorrow, I will be interviewing Marty Leeds. And Friday, we will be having our Ask Me Anything monthly discussion. So if there's a question that you'd like to ask me or you would like me to answer, that we collect the different questions for those particular shows, and you can just contact Joy at sacredwordpublishing.com, and she will collect and list all the questions I will be going through, and I'll just keep adding them until I get to your question and answer. Please know that sometimes, I receive so much mail that it is difficult for me to contact everybody. Even though I try as much as possible, I do dedicate a certain amount of time every day to answering and responding to people's questions. But really, if you saw the number of emails and the number of comments and responses that I get on our videos and our books and all that, it's impossible for me to maintain and to keep up with all of it. But I do try, and I do appreciate all of you. And, you know, please do continue to reach out to me. I'm not in any way ignoring you. I do try to answer as best I can. And those of you that have intriguing question, I do try to share it with, the rest of the listening audience and to read that on air and to share that with others. And also at some point, we're going to put together some books on the questions that you have asked. I think that it would be really beneficial for us to do that. It's just a matter of, finding the time and having the space to do that. I do believe I'll be done with the ancient prophecies of Christ within about 3 weeks' time. God bless everyone. Thank you for joining us. Shalom.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.